We are back for another deep dive into a major Walking Dead character. In honor of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's recent birthday and the results of our Twitter poll, We Are Cowards, we're covering our favorite leather-clad, foul-mouthed baddie. That's right, it's Justin Theroux! I mean, look at him in this jacket. Tell me you wouldn't just beat your brains in with the bat. Beat my brains in, Bat Daddy. Just kidding. In all seriousness aside, we're talking about Negan. So zip up your pissing pants, wrap your sporting equipment in barbed wire, and make some spaghetti, because this is I See Dead People. Let's start at the beginning. The year's 2012 and The Walking Dead is on its monumental 100th issue. Creator and writer Robert Kirkman told Comic Book Resources at the time that it would be the most gruesome and disturbing issue of the series so far. Teasing it even further, Image Comics released a back-page ad that simply read, "Lucille is coming," which excited fans for what they thought was an I Love Lucy crossover. I'm not sure, it's a very specific one. What they got instead was a long-awaited arrival of the most colorful villain the series would ever see. In issue 100, Rick and his people are captured by the Saviors and taken to a clearing to meet their leader, Negan, a leather jacket-wearing brute with a barbed wire bat, twisted sense of humor, and a penchant for saying fuck. He puts our heroes on their knees. Oh my god, is that Sophia? And, as payback for killing his people, decides to kill one of theirs by playing the most horrifying game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo ever. Glenn loses and Negan bashes his head in so badly that his eye pops out. Here's what fans look like reading that. Negan exits stage left with a simple ta-ta, very fancy, kicking off the longest villain arc of the series. Issue 100 became one of the best-selling comics of the decade. It boasted a record 16 variant issues, got sent to a second and third printing, and is still highly regarded as one of the best issues of the series. Despite Negan's instant popularity, Kirkman nearly killed him off several times. Thankfully, he enjoyed writing him so much he couldn't bring himself to do it. You know, some people just like writing fuck. So where did Negan come from? Thanks for asking, very considerate. According to his one-off backstory book, Here's Negan, available now in our Skybound shop, Negan used to be a high school gym teacher before the apocalypse. He even invited his students over to his garage to play ping pong, but would oftentimes belittle them, causing their parents to complain. As for his love life, he was married to a woman named Lucille, and yes, that is the name of the bat. Sadly, Lucille had cancer, which really bummed Negan out, especially while he was having sex with other ladies. But he was by his wife's side in the hospital when the apocalypse hit, so all is forgiven? Look, people are complicated, he's got layers. After she dies and turns, Negan asks a boy to put her down and then heads off into the apocalypse, where he encounters several survival groups who keep getting eaten, rude. Still, he levels up his survival skill tree, plucks a baseball bat off one of his fallen friends, and finally meets Dwight and Sherry's group. It doesn't take long for Negan to take over as leader, wrap barbed wire around his bat, and create the Saviors. Also, fun fact, his original name was Nagus, but Kirkman realized he got it from Deep Space Nine, so he changed it to Negan. Negan's torment didn't stop with the lineup. He made Rick and his people give him half their shit to supply his own community. In issues 104 and 105, we got an intimate look into Negan's world after Carl sneaks his way to the sanctuary and kills some of Negan's men. Impressed, Negan takes Carl under his wing and shows him his way of life, which includes a harem of wives, a point system for the lower classes, a Peloton room, and a harsh justice system that punishes those who don't follow the rules by placing a hot iron on their face. I'd take that over the Peloton room, frankly. He takes Carl back to Rick and continues to plunder their stuff. After weeks of this, Rick decides he's had enough. He gathers his allies from Hilltop and new friends at Kingdom to march on Sanctuary and start all-out war. After several battles, countless deaths, the destruction of the Sanctuary, and some double-crossing by Dwight, Rick defeats Negan and slits his throat, but instead of killing him, he patches him up and throws him in jail, where he stays for an entire Carl puberty time jump. He's eventually broken out by a teenager / Negan stan, Brandon. Damn! Classic Brandon. At this time, Rick and the gang were getting threatened by the Whisperers. We have covered them exhaustively. So Negan infiltrates their camp, gets initiated, arrows a boar, makes fun of Beta, gains their leader Alpha's trust, and then cuts off her head to deliver to Rick. What an arc. So her second-in-command Beta becomes the new leader and marches a horde straight into Alexandria. Rick and Negan settle some of their differences while self-quarantining, but after the Whisperer War is won, Negan is still exiled from the community. In issue 174, Maggie, who's still pissed at Negan for some reason or another, hunts him down and nearly kills him, but decides his pathetic life in isolation is worse than death, so she lets him live. Just what my wife says to me in quarantine. We don't see Negan again until the series finale 20 issues later. By then, our heroes had settled into a community in Ohio called the Commonwealth, and nearly 25 years had passed. Rick was dead, Michonne was a judge, and Carl and Sophia were married with a kid named Andrea. As Carl's reading the story of The Walking Dead to his daughter, we see all our heroes living their lives peacefully. For a single panel, we see Negan drop flowers at Lucille's grave, confirming he survived after all these years. The end. Oh goddammit, we have to cover the show. I have things to do, guys. Fine. Even though Jeffrey Dean Morgan seems born to play Negan, the casting process was intense. The producers saw all sorts of people, including Henry Rollins, who comic Negan's look was based off of. But in the end, they went with JDM, who said he knew exactly who he was auditioning for when he got it.
I've been offered this thing on The Walking Dead is to play like a big bad. And I'm like, no, it's fucking Negan. And I'm fucking doing it.
Soon after, they flew Jeffrey Dean Morgan out to film the now infamous lineup scene. He didn't know it would be a cliffhanger, and in 2016 admitted he understood fans' frustration, which is like understanding that people get annoyed when they get wet. I don't know. Like, it's a natural response. We were in the right. So Negan killed Abraham, a character who already died at this point in the comics, and then Glenn, which comic fans were waiting for and TV fans were horrified by. Aside from his fate playing out nearly the same way in the comics, Kirkman spoiled Glenn's death a year earlier on Comedy Central's At Midnight show.
Eventually, a character named Negan is introduced. He's going to bash in Glenn's brains with a baseball bat called Lucille.
After the lineup scene, Negan's story mostly aligned with the comics. He terrorized our heroes, took half their shit, took Carl under his wing for a day, and shanked Spencer, which still cheers me up on rainy days. Speaking of, let's hit Troy with a hammer one more time. Keeps me warm at night. Like the source material, Rick wages all-out war against him, which he eventually wins thanks to Dwight and Eugene's double-crossing. Rick saves him and throws him in jail, but his sentence is much longer in the show. Eventually, Carol, not Brandon, breaks him out of jail and tells him to kill Alpha quickly. He kills Brandon quickly and plays the long game with Alpha, even having to sleep with her, standing up. In his socks. Eventually, he gains Alpha's trust, helps her burn down Hilltop, tricks her into meeting with Lydia, and then decapitates Alpha and brings her head to Carol. Like Rick in the comics, Carol isn't exactly crowning him mayor of the apocalypse, so she pieces out, leaving Negan to make nice with Daryl. Oh, that was a great bit. We tell you what happens next, but we are in an indefinite hiatus. But Maggie is coming. Will she act the same as her comic counterpart? Will Negan leave the series until the finale? And why can't you craft more than one thing at a time in Animal Crossing? Ha! You thought we were done talking about it. We're never done. We will die on this hill. Negan has been a completely transformational character outside the comics and show. He's inspired endless cosplays, action figures, Funkos, shirts, pins. He ruined Halloween once, and he was also a so-so fighting game character. He's also the reason people no longer say The Good Wife's Jeffrey Dean Morgan. You name it, it probably exists. And that wraps up this week's episode of I See Dead People. For more Negan stuff, check out our panel to screens. What are your favorite Negan moments? Would you let Jeffrey Dean Morgan adopt you as a farm animal, and why is it yes? Tell us in the comments, and make sure to check out our Walking Dead podcast, Talk Dead to Me. We're rewatching classic episodes with old cast members. It's like wearing a sweater stitched out of nostalgia. I'm Tondorf, and we'll see you next time.
Ta-ta.